Hello, friends. Liam Murphy back. Today, I'm doing my first video of many in my beginner to intermediate series where I teach concepts rather than review my tournament games. Today, I'm going to be teaching you the first opening you should learn in chess. So, whether you're a beginner or an intermediate player, like around 1,000 online, this will be appropriate for you. For those who don't know, I used to be a chess teacher in New York City. I would, chess was a required class in school, so I would teach kids as young as 4.5 how to play chess. And this was the first opening I wanted kids to learn just to get them ready with the fundamentals of chess. So there's three main things you need to focus on at the beginning of a chess game. Number one, you need to control the center of the chessboard. And when we're talking about the center of the chessboard, we're talking about e4, d4, d5, and e5, these squares on the chessboard. Number two, you need to develop your pieces. Pawns do not count as pieces. The pieces we're primarily talking about are your knights and your bishops. Chess is a war, and to win the war, you need to get your soldiers onto the battlefield. That's the way I would talk about it with my students. And number three, you need to get your king castled. You need to get him safe. When I talk to kids, I would say, the king is kind of like your grandpa. He's not a fighting piece. He's not a piece you want marching into the battle. He's a piece you want to hide in the corner of the chessboard and keep safe. So these are not necessarily the best computer moves, but I think they are the best moves for beginners to learn the game of chess. So e4 is the first move we do. This move does all three of the opening principles. Again, control the center, develop your pieces, castle your king in one move. It controls e4 because you placed the pawn on there, and it controls d5 because you attack that square. It allows your bishop to get onto the chessboard, and if your bishop moves, you're one step closer to castling your king. As black, I'd like them to play e5. Black controls the square e5, and they can attack d4, and they are allowing their bishop to move as well. The next move white plays is knight f3. Develop the knight towards the center of the board, attack the center of the chessboard with the knight. White is attacking the e5 square. It's important to show beginners that placing your knights on the edge of the board is not considered good. The way I would talk about it with students is imagine a light bulb above your head. You want this light bulb bright, and they say knights on the rim are dim, meaning not a good idea. On the edge of the board, the knight can only move to 4 squares, where if you move it to f3, the knight is attacking 8 different squares, the maximum that the knight can attack. So don't put the knight on the edge of the board. Knights on the rim are dim. So knight f3 attacking the e5 pawn. And I would ask the kids, how can black develop a piece and defend their e5 pawn? Hopefully you found it on your own. Knight c6. Black develops a knight. They defend their pawn, and they attack the center square d4. Next, I'd have white play bishop c4. White develops a bishop, gets one step closer to castling. He attacks the center of the chessboard by attacking the square d5. And bonus, the bishop is pointed at f7. And this is a weak point of the opposing king because only the king defends f7. No other piece defends f7. So getting your pieces pointed at the king is generally a good thing. As black, I would want them to play bishop c5, kind of mirroring white here, also attacking the center, developing a piece, getting closer to castling, pointing at f2. I did not want my students to play knight f6 because this welcomes the fried liver, which is just kind of complicated if you're a beginner. White can play knight g5, and you have to know what you're doing as white doubles up on f7. If black just played queen e7, for example, white could take the pawn with check, and you do not want to trade the queen for the bishop because the knight keeps it safe. A queen is worth 9 points. A bishop's only worth 3. So that is why I would have my students play bishop c5 because now if white tries to play knight d5 to double up on f7, well, the black queen can just take the knight. Oh, after bishop c5, I would have my students castle the king. We have developed pieces. We have gotten our king safe. A goal, if you're a beginner, is you do not want to lose in the beginning of the chess game. You want to get your pieces out, castle your king. If you do that, you're going to play the chess game longer. You're going to have more opportunities to learn. So, white has got two pieces out. He's got a center pawn out. He's attacking the center of the board, and his king is safe. He's doing great. Black wants the castle, but they cannot. So, how can you get closer to castling? Of course, knight f6. You attack the center, and you can castle next turn. The black knight is attacking e4. So I would ask my students, how can white develop a piece and defend the pawn that is attacked? You got to think about what your opponent is doing. And knight c3 hits the board here, defends the e4 pawn, attacks d5, attacking the center. We develop towards the center of the board. And as black, I would have them now captured. So both sides have two knights out, two bishops out, and their king safe. By the way, the reason why we usually move our knights before our bishops is the way I would talk about this is that the knights are not flexible pieces. They almost always go on the squares c3, f3, d2, or e2 to start the game. The bishop, you kind of like to get more information about what your opponent is doing before you move it. So the bishop's not considered as flexible. Sometimes you move it after the knights because of that. Okay, so both sides of castle, they've developed their pieces. Are they done developing their pieces? A lot of beginners get here and they're like, yeah, okay, now I can start moving my queen. Well, no, you haven't developed your bishop yet. Your rooks aren't seeing each other. So what can white move to allow this bishop to get in the game? And the move I would like to play here is d3. We like d3 better than b3 because we want this kind of takes a square away from the bishop. d3 creates a pawn chain, further defends your e4 pawn, and allows your bishop to move on this diagonal. Now, you do not want the bishop to come to g5 and pin the knight to the queen as black. So even in kindergarten, I was teaching my students that if white got to move again, they would play bishop g5 here and pin the knight to the queen. So what move can black make to stop the bishop from going to g5? And of course, the answer is pawn to h6. This move does a lot of things. Number one, it gives your king another square to move to if he needs it, if things get complicated on the back rank. And more importantly, it stops the bishop from pinning the knight to the queen. Of course, if you played bishop g5, they would just take your bishop. The pawn is worth 1 point, a bishop's worth 3, so that would be a bad trade for white. So, and just to show you what can happen if black just does like a random move, like let's play a6, white pins the knight, and then they play d6, getting their bishop in the game, they think. Well, here, white can play knight d5, putting pressure on the pin piece. You can't take this knight or you lose your queen. And if you play a move like h6, thinking, okay, I'm attacking your bishop, move away. Well, here, white can take the knight on f6 with check. Again, you're not going to take with your queen. You would lose your queen. So they take with the pawn on f6. And uh-oh, they also lost their pawn on h6. And the way I would talk about this is imagine your king was in a cabin and there were hungry bears outside that wanted to eat you. Do you think you want the door closed to your cabin, like the White King here, nice and safe? Or do you think you want the doors open to your cabin where White can bring pieces in and try to checkmate the Black King? And of course, the kids would say, we want the door closed. So here, the Black King is very unsafe. The Rook is being attacked. They're going to move their knight. They're going to try to get their queen in, and they're going to try to checkmate you. This is a disaster for Black. And so that is why we do not allow the pin to occur with the move h6. Here, white can move this bishop to either e3 or d2. I think either move is okay with me, but we would have e3, and black has a choice. They can either trade bishops or put the bishop on b6, where it is protected by both pawns. Let's say the black bishop moved to b6. Of course, you cannot ignore this move because the bishop would be captured. So b6, and if white decides to trade, we would of course take with the a pawn, not the c pawn, because you want to capture towards the center of the chessboard, and now your rook sees the chessboard, so it is developed. So let's say black plays bishop b6 and white plays queen d2, allowing your rooks to see each other. Your rooks want to see each other. This is what's needed to complete your development. The queen defends the bishop. It also creates a queen and bishop battery. Maybe you have ideas of sacrificing even. And here, black still needs to get developed. Their bishop's not developed. So they need to play the move pawn to d6, allowing their bishop to get on the chessboard. Even though there's nothing to pin this knight, so like bishop g4 does not pin the knight to anything, I still wanted my students to get in the habit of playing h3 here and stopping this bishop from getting to g4 for similar reasons we saw as black. And here, black can develop their bishop to d7 or e6. Let's say e6 in this situation. White does not need to move their bishop. It is defended by a pawn. But let's just say they take the bishop in this scenario. Black would take with their pawn. And your rooks generally want to be in the center of the chessboard. So the E file, a file is the squares going up and down the chessboard, and the D file. This is where your rooks want to be. Because the center of the chessboard is the part of the board that's most likely to open up. So that's why you put your rooks there. So where does the A rook want to go? Well, of course, it wants to go to D1. It does not want to go to E1 because then this rook can't move and it can't get to D1. So you move your A rook to D1, maybe preparing moves like D4 to open up the center. You're lining your rook up with the queen. Black also wants to get their rooks connected, so the queen should go to E7 or D7. Let's say it goes to E7 here. White wants to finish developing, so it moves its F rook to E1. Black wants to finish developing, so it moves its A rook to D8. And let's just say white plays A3 here. And black wants to finish developing, so it could move its rook to E8, but in this scenario, since white has taken the E pawn, it actually opened up the F file for what we call a half open file, where black does have an open file. There's no pawns of his, but white does not. He does have an F pawn. So in this situation, black would actually leave its rook on F8 because it doesn't need to come to the center behind these two pawns. It is already developed. And from here, you play your chess game. So hope this video was helpful for people starting out. Pure beginners, I often see them start games. I've seen a lot of beginners play chess. Instead of doing moves like we do, beginners like to do things like this. They just both kind of like move their pawns. They're just moving pawns. Maybe they move their rook up. No, this is not what we're trying to do. This is not developing our knights and bishops. This is not controlling the center of the chessboard. This is not castling our king. So, hope this was helpful. Good luck out there. Please like and subscribe. More beginner content coming your